Chapter 31. That was clearly Su Anan's home, and Su Anan was the legitimate daughter of the Su family. Yet everything had been stolen by Su Zihen. Not only had she taken Anan's house, but she had also taken her man. Anan, it's because you didn't hand over the jade pendant yesterday that Su Zian and the others are bullying you, Fushin guessed. Su Anan smiled faintly and replied, no. She didn't want to elaborate, knowing it would only make Fushin angry. Su Anan hated herself for her inability to control her temper and for fighting with Su Zihan. She hated her own helplessness. For years, she had dreamed of taking her sister and leaving that house, but even now, she had to endure the bullying. Xiaoxin, I'm a little tired. I'll rest first, Su Anan said to Fushin over the phone. Fushin understood their tacit bond. If Su Anan didn't want to talk, she wouldn't press her further. After hanging up with Fushin, Su Anan noticed a text message from an unfamiliar number. It read, come back on Sunday, let's go to the Su family. It was a simple message, but Su Anan instantly knew it was from Gu Mocheng. His words were always brief, to the point, and devoid of unnecessary explanations. Hadn't he said he would come back in time? Why was he now saying they would go to the Su family? If it had been earlier, Su Anan would have been thrilled by such a message. But after last night's events, she no longer wished for Gu Mocheng to be involved with the Su family. She didn't want Su Hua using her to gain benefits for himself, Jiang Mei, and their wealth. If Su Hua had shown even a sliver of kindness to her sister, Su Anan might have considered cooperating with him. But he hadn't. Su Anan called Su Hua, her tone calm but firm. Su Hua didn't expect her call and felt no guilt over the previous day's events. He was still enraged by her defiance. He had raised her, given her food and shelter, yet she dared to threaten him. What's wrong? He asked, barely masking his irritation. Gu Mocheng said he'd come on Sunday, Su Anan replied mockingly. Hearing that Gu Mocheng had agreed to visit the Su family, a smile broke across Su Hua's face. His tone softened immediately. Anan, you've worked so hard, he said, feigning concern. Did I hurt you yesterday? Su Anan sneered inwardly. Now he wanted to play the concerned father? Yes, it still hurts, she replied bluntly, her sarcasm cutting through the pretense. Su Hua coughed awkwardly, trying to hide his embarrassment. Anan, you know I didn't mean to be so harsh. The Mu family insisted on having that jade pendant. What could I do? And your sister truly loves Mu Jinyu. I couldn't separate them. Su Anan had heard enough of his lies. She cut to the point. I want to take my sister out for 3 days. No. Su Hua rejected her immediately. Silence hung over the call. Su Hua considered the upcoming project that required Gu Mocheng's involvement. Anan, you know your sister's condition. She's not fit to leave the house, he said. Su Anan clenched her fists tightly. Not fit was his excuse to keep her imprisoned. He feared that if Su Ruochu were seen outside, people would discover how he had destroyed her life and confined her for the sake of the Su family's reputation. Father, I want to take my sister out for a walk, Su Anan repeated firmly. Su Hua's tone turned icy. Anan, what right do you have to make demands of me? Fine, Su Anan replied coolly. Gu Mocheng may not visit the Su family on Sunday after all. Grating his teeth, Su Hua growled. Su Anan smirked. Father's worried I'll take my sister and leave, isn't he? Anan, defying me will lead to no good, Su Hua warned. Like how it led to no good for my sister? Su Anan countered. Her elder sister had been punished severely for disobeying Su Hua's plans for her life. So is that a no? Su Hua hesitated. He needed Gu Mocheng's support. Finally, he relented slightly. You can stay with your sister at the Su family for 3 days. All right, Su Anan agreed. She knew Su Hua wouldn't let her take her sister out, but this was a start. One day, when she had enough resources and independence, she'd take her sister away for good. I hope father will take better care of my sister, Su Anan added. I don't want her falling ill again. Su Hua understood the implied warning. Fine, he said gruffly. Su Ruochu was still his daughter, and he wouldn't tolerate others harming her. He had already reprimanded Jiang Mei for Ruochu's recent illness, even though Jiang Mei denied any involvement. Anan, as long as you obey me, your sister will be fine. On Sunday morning, Su Anan woke early, preparing to return to the Su family with Gu Mocheng. Uncle Chen entered the room with a box, informing her that Mr. Gu would meet her later. He said he'll go directly to the Su family, Uncle Chen explained. Oh, Su Anan replied, relieved that Gu Mocheng wouldn't back out. Madam, this was prepared for you by Mr. Gu, Uncle Chen said, opening the box. He glanced at Su Anan's face. The palm imprint was still faintly visible. As a servant, he typically refrained from meddling in his employer's affairs, but seeing how kind Su Anan had always been to the household, he had informed Gu Mocheng about her injuries. Mr. Gu's reaction had been swift and decisive, as always. Chapter 32. Su Anan looked at the open box and was surprised to see a beautiful dress inside, much more exquisite than anything she had worn before. The gown sparkled as though it were adorned with real diamonds. And this, Uncle Chen said, handing her a necklace that Gu Mocheng had prepared. The moment Su Anan opened the jewelry box, she froze in shock. If the dress was expensive, this necklace was a priceless treasure. Made entirely of diamonds, the necklace's centerpiece was a blue diamond shaped like a teardrop. Su Anan recognized it instantly from fashion magazines. It was the famed blue tears, valued at tens of millions. Gu Mocheng's wealth astounded her. For a fleeting moment, the thought crossed her mind. Being his wife meant being extraordinarily privileged. This necklace wasn't something money could easily buy. Imagining herself at the banquet wearing the dazzling dress and necklace, Suanan felt a surge of satisfaction. The thought of outshining Suzy Han and angering Jian Mei lifted her spirits. Even the lingering pain on her face seemed to fade as she smiled. Her good mood seemed to infect her pet, Whitey, who had been circling her for days. Seeing it wagging its tail, Suanan chuckled. "Whitey, should I bring you along to the banquet?" she asked. The dog responded as though it understood her words. After admiring the gifts, Suanan decided to send a message to Gu Mocheng to express her gratitude and perhaps flatter her benefactor. "Hubby, thank you for the gift," she typed. Anxiously awaiting his reply, she smiled when a text finally came through. Opening it eagerly, she found just one word, N. This man cherished words as though they were gold. She hesitated, then sent another message to show her concern. "Hubby, take care of yourself while you're away." He replied with another single word, "Okay." Suanan sighed. Was it so hard for him to type a full sentence? She could only laugh at how meaningless it felt to chat with a 30-year-old man who clearly lacked interest in modern communication. Then, unexpectedly, a third message arrived. "Be good." The words carried a commanding tone, reminding her of Gu Mocheng's decisive personality. She imagined him typing while focused on documents, his mind sharp and calculating. "Be obedient? Does he think I'm Whitey?" she muttered, looking down at the dog lying beside her bed. Lightly nudging it with her foot, she teased, "Whitey, be obedient." Whitey whimpered in protest, clearly displeased. It wasn't a mere dog, it was General Gu Mocheng's prized pet. Feeling uninspired to continue their conversation, Suanan shifted her thoughts elsewhere. She opened her social media and posted, "Generation gap, too many ditches to cross." The Su family held a lavish banquet, inviting most of Peace City's upper-class society. While the Xiao, Han, and Lu families declined to attend, many others accepted the invitation. Word had spread that a mysterious and influential figure would be attending, piquing everyone's curiosity. Hoping to network and gain favor, the attendees arrived dressed to impress. Suwa, thrilled by the grandeur of the event, stood at the entrance to personally welcome the guests. His plan was simple. When Gu Mocheng arrived, he would announce him as his daughter's husband. That would surely elevate the Su family's status and compel even the Xiao, Han, and Lu families to seek alliances. As a car pulled up to the entrance, Suhua's eyes lit up. Hastily approaching, he assumed Gu Mocheng had arrived. Suanan stepped out of the car, feeling awkward as she saw Suhua's expectant expression. Even Jiang Mei followed closely, smiling in anticipation. But as Suhua's gaze fixated on the car door, Suanan couldn't help but smirk. "Whitey, come out," she called. A snow-white dog leapt gracefully from the car. As its paws touched the ground, Suhua and Jiang Mei's smiles vanished. They realized too late that the car carried no one but Suanan and the dog. Suhua's expression darkened. He felt humiliated. "Where is Mr. Gu?" he asked, struggling to conceal his irritation. "He'll arrive later," Suanan replied lightly, brushing her hair to reveal her still healing face. Though most of the swelling and bruising had faded, the marks were faintly visible. Suzy Han, standing nearby, stiffened at the sight of Suanan's face. She had slapped her cousin hard enough to leave a lasting impression. Suhua, too, felt uneasy. Suanan was now Gu Mocheng's wife. What would he think if he noticed her injuries? Still, Suhua rationalized that Gu Mocheng, as a man from a wealthy family, likely regarded Suanan as nothing more than a temporary amusement. Surely, he wouldn't concern himself with her minor injuries. "Father, Auntie Jian," Suanan said with a bright smile. "Although Whitey is Mr. Gu's beloved pet, you didn't need to rush over just to greet him." Her sarcasm was unmistakable, leaving Suhua and Jiang Mei fuming. Jiang Mei in particular hated dogs and couldn't believe Suanan had brought one to the banquet. "Anan, why did you bring a dog here?" Jiang Mei snapped. "Auntie," Suanan replied innocently, "Whitey is Mr. Gu's treasure. He's been missing him terribly, so I thought it would be nice for them to reunite. Father, is it all right if I bring Whitey to the banquet?" she added with feigned sweetness. Faced with Suanan's reasoning, Suhua had no choice but to nod. "It's fine," he said through gritted teeth. Jiang Mei's face turned pale with frustration as Suanan, smiling triumphantly, led Whitey into the banquet. Inside, Suanan immediately became the center of attention. Her radiant dress, paired with the sparkling blue tears necklace, captured everyone's admiration. Even Whitey seemed to bask in the limelight, drawing curious glances from the crowd. For Suanan, this was a small victory, a moment of defiance in a life filled with struggles. Chapter 33. It wasn't just the first time anyone had seen a human walk in with a dog to a banquet, but also the first time many had seen someone as stunning as Suanan. Wearing light makeup, her natural beauty shone through, and the silk-white dress she wore accentuated her fair, delicate skin. She looked like a fairy gracing the mortal world. The diamond necklace around her neck sparkled under the lights, leaving all the women present in awe. "Isn't that necklace the Blue Tears? I heard it's worth millions. It's the latest release from Hans this year, and there's only one in the entire world." Whispers and conversations buzzed around Suanan. They moved from marveling at the necklace to admiring her dress, and finally to her sheer elegance. "This dress must be incredibly expensive. I remember wanting my husband to buy it for me, but the price scared him away," one woman commented. "Who is she? She's so beautiful." Another asked. Suanon smiled politely, listening to the chatter around her. She held Whitey's leash and began to look for a seat, planning to wait for Gumo Cheng. However, before she could settle down, a man approached her, attempting to strike up a conversation. Suanon politely declined, her every movement graceful and poised. Yet, the more men she turned away, the more seemed to gather around her. Amused, she looked at the crowd of admirers. Fushin always teased her, saying she lacked refinement and couldn't carry herself with elegance. Suanon chuckled inwardly, thinking she should have Heima take a few pictures of this scene and send them to Fushin. It would surely leave Fushin feeling envious. On one side, Suanon basked in the attention. On the other, Su Zihan descended the staircase in her white princess dress, her mood souring as she took in the scene. Su Zihan had spent hours preparing for the banquet. She had bought an expensive dress and matching necklace, rehearsing how she would charm everyone. She envisioned herself as the belle of the ball, the princess every man admired. But instead, all eyes were on Suanon. That shameless woman, Su Zihan hissed through gritted teeth. Her gaze landed on Suanon's dress and the blue tears necklace. The hatred in her eyes deepened. Sister Zihan, Suya greeted as she approached. Suya, the daughter of Suhua's younger brother, was around the same age as Suanon. Unlike Suhua, Suya's father had limited achievements and relied on Suhua for support. Thanks to this, Suhua's family treated Suya's family well, allowing them to live in a city center residence. Yet, this generosity came with strings attached, as Suhua's family often leveraged their position to belittle them. Is that Anan? She's dressed so beautifully, I almost didn't recognize her. Suya said, eyeing Suanon with envy. Compared to Suanon's stunning attire, Su Zihan's outfit seemed ordinary. Is that so? Su Zihan snapped, glaring at Suya. Are you blind? Despite her jealousy toward Suanon, Su Zihan looked down on Suya's family. If it weren't for Suhua, Suya's family wouldn't even have a foothold in the city. Suya, quick to sense the tension, immediately backtracked. But no matter how beautiful Anan looks, she could never compare to you, Sister Zihan. Su Zihan's expression softened. Of course, she said with a smug smile. Still, her eyes lingered on Suanon's dress and necklace. As someone who loved dressing up, Su Zihan could easily estimate their worth. Gumo Cheng might have been old and unattractive in her eyes, but his generosity was undeniable. She convinced herself that the blue tears necklace should have been hers. After the banquet, she vowed to make Suanon return everything. I heard that necklace is called Blue Tears, Suya continued. It's incredibly expensive. Where did Anan suddenly get so much money? She didn't buy it. Gumo Cheng must have, Su Zihan said disdainfully. She's lucky to have latched onto an old man. Su Zihan took great pleasure in tarnishing Suanon's reputation. In her imagination, Gumo Cheng was a balding, middle-aged man with a beer belly, nothing like the dashing men she knew. She comforted herself with this mental image, convinced that Suanon's luck came at the cost of dignity. No matter how rich he is, he's just an ugly old man, she muttered, and once he's done with her, she'll have nothing left. Suya's face reddened with embarrassment. While she envied Suanon, she dared not openly agree with Su Zihan's cruel remarks. Instead, she lowered her head, avoiding further confrontation. While they whispered, the second young master of the Jiang family, notorious for his lecherous behavior, approached. He eyed Suya with interest. Cousin, who's the beauty standing beside you? He asked, his gaze lingering on Suya. Recognizing the predatory look in his eyes, Suya immediately stepped behind Su Zihan. Sister Zihan, she murmured, seeking refuge. Su Zihan didn't mind the attention from the young master, knowing it would likely shield her from unwanted advances. However, she silently smirked at Suya's discomfort, thinking, better her than me. Chapter 34, Sister Zihan. Suya called out just as Su Zihan was about to instruct young master Zhang to act on his lustful intentions. Suya pointed towards Mu Jinyu, who was not far away, and said, Young Master Mu is here. Su Zihan's expression darkened as she followed Suya's gaze. Not only was Mu Jinyu present, but he was also walking towards Suanon, his eyes fixed on her. Seeing this, Su Zihan's anger flared, and young Master Zhang, noticing the scene, turned to look as well. Cousin, who is that? He asked, his interest piqued. Suanon, Su Zihan snapped irritably. Why did yet another man seem captivated by Suanon? A sinister thought crossed her mind. If young Master Zhang could be lured into a scandal with Suanon, it would surely ruin her reputation. Just imagining Suanon being disgraced and despised by Gumo Cheng brought a twisted smile to Su Zihan's lips. Cousin, are you interested? She asked slyly. She's stunning, young Master Zhang muttered, his eyes lingering on Suanon. His lecherous gaze made even Su Zihan feel disgusted, but the thought of using him to destroy Suanon outweighed her discomfort. If you're interested, I'll help you arrange it, Su Zihan offered with a malicious grin. Young Master Zhang eyes lit up with excitement. Really? Hurry up, cousin. Don't worry, Su Zihan replied, her smile cold. By tonight, she'll be in your bed. Just don't break her completely. Young Master Zhang laughed, understanding her implication. You're wicked, Zihan, he said, pointing at her playfully. Big sister Zihan, won't uncle be angry if he finds out? Suya asked hesitantly, her worry evident. Su Zihan sneered. Then would you like to take her place? Suya quickly shook her head. No, I'm just worried you'll get into trouble. What trouble? It's Suanon's fault for stealing my cousin's attention, Su Zihan retorted sharply. She was determined. Before Gumocheng arrived, she would ensure young Master Zhang compromised Su Anan. If Su Anan were caught in such a scandal, Gumocheng would surely discard her. Without Gumocheng's protection, Su Anan would be cast out by both the Su and Gu families. No man in Peace City would want her after such humiliation. The thought of Su Anan's downfall made Su Zihan gleeful. She and young Master Zhang shared a knowing look, each plotting their next move. Meanwhile, Su Anan sat in a quiet corner, feeding steak to Whitey. She avoided the crowd, finding solace in the playful companionship of her dog. When a shadow loomed over her, she looked up to see Mu Jinyu standing in front of her. "What do you want?" she asked curtly, recognizing the man she now considered a scumbag. "Anan, can we sit down and talk?" Mu Jinyu asked awkwardly. His gaze softened as he took in her appearance. Tonight, Su Anan looked breathtaking, and he couldn't help but feel drawn to her. Su Anan's expression remained indifferent. What was there to talk about? His betrayal? His relationship with Su Zihan? She had no interest in revisiting those wounds. "Anan, I'm sorry for what happened before," Wu Jinyu said, his voice filled with regret. Su Anan's lips curled into a mocking smile. "So, Brother Jinyu, you're not planning to cancel the engagement anymore?" Wu Jinyu hesitated, caught off guard by her directness. "Anan, you're beautiful tonight," he said, attempting to change the subject. "Finally realized that, have you?" Su Anan replied dryly. "You regret it now, don't you?" Mu Jinyu's awkward cough betrayed his inner thoughts, but before he could respond, Su Zihan approached, her anger evident. "Anan, what are you doing?" Su Zihan demanded, her voice sharp. Feigning innocence, Su Anan turned to Mu Jinyu and asked loudly, "Brother Jinyu, who's more beautiful today, me or Sister Zihan?" Unaware of Su Zihan's presence behind him, Mu Jinyu replied honestly, "Anan, you look stunning." Hearing his words, Su Zihan's fury boiled over. She stormed forward, grabbing Mu Jinyu's hand possessively. "Brother Jinyu, let's go greet my parents," she said, forcing a smile despite her rage. Mu Jinyu, sensing the tension, reluctantly allowed himself to be led away. As he left, Su Anan called out sweetly, "Take care, Brother Jinyu." Her words stung, and Su Zihan's grip on Mu Jinyu tightened as she fought to maintain her composure. The guests nearby whispered among themselves, speculating about the complicated relationship between the trio. Su Anan's engagement to Mu Jinyu was well known, and the rumors about Su Zihan's involvement only fueled the gossip. Could it be true that Su Zihan stole her sister's fiancé? Poor Su Anan, even her fiancé was taken by her half-sister. Hearing these murmurs, Su Zihan's face grew darker. She pulled Mu Jinyu away, determined to reclaim control of the narrative. But in her heart, she seethed with hatred for Su Anan's ability to turn the tables so effortlessly. Chapter 35. Anan, I'll go over first, Mu Jinyu said with a smile before turning to leave. Seeing the exchange between Su Anan and Mu Jinyu, Su Zihan's anger flared. However, the thought of Su Anan ending up in young Master Zhang bed later that night brought her a twisted sense of satisfaction. She could hardly wait to see Su Anan humiliated. As Mu Jinyu walked away, Su Anan's cold expression returned. She no longer bothered to spare him a glance. Trash like him, she thought, was perfect for Su Zihan. There was no chance she'd ever take him back. The banquet was in full swing, with all the invited guests present, except for Gumocheng. Su Hua grew increasingly anxious, frequently checking his watch. If Gumocheng didn't show up, rumors would spread across Peace City, mocking Su Hua for lying and boasting. The mere thought of it made him feel embarrassed and furious. "Anan, why hasn't Mr. Gu arrived yet?" Su Hua demanded as he approached her. His question snapped Su Anan out of her own thoughts. She hadn't noticed Gumocheng's absence until now. "He's not here yet?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "Call him and find out when he'll arrive. Everyone is waiting," Su Hua urged impatiently. "All right," Su Anan replied, stepping aside to make the call. Dialing Gumocheng's number, she was met with an automated message. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." His phone was off? For a moment, Su Anan felt uneasy, but she quickly dismissed the thought. Gumocheng had no reason to lie to her. Something must have come up on his way to the banquet. "Dad, Mr. Gu will be here shortly," Su Anan reassured Su Hua. "Can you hurry him up?" Su Hua pressed. Su Anan shook her head firmly. "Father, I wouldn't dare." She knew better than to rush someone like Gumocheng. His attendance was already a favor to the Su family, and being late was hardly unusual for someone of his status. "True," Su Hua muttered, walking off to mingle with the other guests. Many of them had already asked if the mysterious big shot had arrived. Su Hua felt a sinking sense of dread as he tried to maintain his composure. A servant approached Su Anan, offering her a glass of juice from a tray. She accepted it without much thought and took a sip. Not long after, young Master Zhang appeared beside her. "Cousin," he greeted, his eyes lingering on her chest. The diamonds adorning her dress sparkled brightly, but his gaze was fixed on the faint glimpse of her skin beneath. Su Anan's skin crawled under his lecherous stare. Without looking at him, she continued drinking her juice, determined to ignore him. Unfazed, Zhang introduced himself. "My name is Zhang Shengshu." Kidney deficiency, Su Anan thought wryly, holding back a snort. She knew he was Su Zihan's cousin and part of the Zhang family, the same family that had contributed to her mother's tragic fate. "Oh," she replied curtly. Zhang Shengshu's persistent gaze made her increasingly uncomfortable. When he didn't leave, she decided to move to another part of the venue. As Suanan stood, a sudden wave of heat surged through her body. She felt an overwhelming dryness in her throat and beads of sweat forming on her skin. Thinking it was the crowded hall, she stepped outside into the quieter garden, hoping for relief. But the heat only intensified, and she began to feel weak. Just as she tried to collect herself, a pair of hands grabbed her from behind. "Cousin Anan!" Jiang Shengshu's voice sent a wave of disgust through her. His lewd grin and wandering hands made her skin crawl. "Let go of me." Suanan snarled, biting his hand and forcing him to release her. She staggered backward, her legs unsteady. Something was wrong. Her body felt unnaturally hot and weak. "Cousin Anan, are you all right?" Jiang Shengshu asked mockingly, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Panic set in as Suanan realized what was happening. She had been drugged. The thought of it happening in her own home filled her with rage and despair. Who could have done this? Su Hua. No, he wouldn't risk angering Gumo Cheng. That left Jiang Mei or Su Zihan. Fury bubbled within her. These two women had nothing better to do than torment her. "Cousin Anan, if the old man can't satisfy you, why not give me a try?" Jiang Shengshu taunted, stepping closer. Suanan's heart pounded as she backed away. The smirk on Jiang Shengshu's face made her stomach churn. She had to think fast. Summoning her remaining strength, she glared at him and said, "Get lost." Her voice was shaky but laced with defiance. Jiang Shengshu's grin widened as he reached for her again. "Don't fight it, Anan. You'll enjoy this." Suanan's vision blurred, but her determination burned brighter. She would not let herself become a victim. Not to him. Not to anyone.